We want to thank everyone for tuning in to another special episode. Tonight we have a very special guest. I had to print out a list of the things he's done, and it's like half a book itself. So tonight's guest is an Emmy-nominated host, writer, and producer of the New England Legends series on PBS, as well as host of New England Legends podcast. He's written over a dozen books. He's the founder of GhostVillage.com, which is the most popular paranormal destination on the web, according to Google. Public speaker. He's given a TEDx talk in New York City, hosts 30-odd minutes. He's written for newspapers such as Boston Globe and USA Today, guest on hundreds of TV series, writer and researcher on numerous shows, including Aftershocks, Paranormal Challenge, and probably everyone's favorite, Ghost Adventures. Have I forgotten anything, Jeff?
Makes a mean salsa? I
That
don't know.
too.
There you go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank Mr. Jeff Belanger for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Glad to finally get you on. I know you're like the busiest dude in the world, it seems.
Yeah, no, it's great when I tell people it's like having 5 full-time jobs. and it has me running around a lot, traveling a lot, working strange hours, but I love it, and you have to love this work. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of person to do this type of stuff too, and you're definitely one of the most sincere, genuine people out there, so we see why you're busy.
You.
Extremely humble as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that.
No, you are.
So
we
got a few questions for you. We're going to kind of pick your brain for a little bit.
First, I think we need to introduce everyone who's on this.
Oh yeah, we did it.
Mega call, because I know only 2 of you.
Yeah. My name's Ben Ring. Everyone knows me as one of the main guys in PvP.
I'm Anthony. I do camera work and tech work and audio.
And then Lauren.
I'm Lauren Middleton. I am an investigator, as well as a writer and researcher of the paranormal, and I'm a huge fan, Jeff. I'm just going to get that out there.
Oh, well, thank you.
Huge fan is an understatement.
Yeah,
like,
there's a shrine.
Yeah, like there may be a poster or 2 in Lauren's room.
Well, we'll just get Ben and Anthony off this call, and
All right.
It finally comes out.
You just made her dreams.
Yep.
Tim is sick tonight, so we won't have him, but it's all right. That gives us a little more personal time with Jeff. So yeah, one of the big things we want to know is like your introductions to this field, like the paranormal, the research, and all that stuff. What got you into it?
Yeah, so I grew up in Newtown, Connecticut, and that's where my family still lives. And so a couple of things. Newtown, like a lot of New England towns, historic, a lot of old homes. Not the house I lived in per se. I didn't grow up in a haunted house. I don't have that traditional background, but my friends did. And I remember them telling me that their houses were haunted, and I thought that was really interesting because they didn't describe it like any Hollywood movie. It was just, yeah, someone else lives here with us. And so would have sleepovers and would break out the Ouija board, and I just got hooked. And the town next to Newtown is Monroe, Connecticut, and that's where Ed and Lorraine Warren live. So I've known those folks since I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I saw some of their lectures. And then when I went to college, I wanted to be a writer, a newspaper reporter. And so I started writing features. I was never really a hard news guy. And around October, you go looking for these haunted legend stories, and I got hooked on it. And so this was the early days of the web. This is the mid-1990s. And the paranormal articles that I had were getting like 10 times the traffic of all the other articles on the website combined. And this is like the very early days of the web. And I went, wow, that's really interesting. And the newspaper I was writing for went under, and I still had these articles. And I went, this would be great to have some kind of repository for this. And I wanted to learn how to build websites. So I started ghostvillage.com back in 1999. Holy cow, 19 years ago. And I know, like that's like a great grandpa in internet website age. I mean, there's not too many older than us, but there's a few. And then that evolved into writing for books and then working in television. And this is one of those careers that I don't know where you would go to school for it. I don't know how you would plan for it. It's just one day I woke up and I went, holy cow, like I'm a full-time paranormal person. Like that's how I make my living. And it's, like I said, it's great. It's been a huge, amazing adventure, and it's let me go all over the world and meet all kinds of amazing people, both living and dead. And I wouldn't imagine doing anything else at this point.
So you said you grew up kind of alongside the Warrens. Did you ever have the chance to work with them on cases or see any of their like personal footage, anything like that?
Yeah, so I've been to their house a couple times, and that includes their museum. And I never worked with them on any cases. That wasn't really my thing. I mean, it's funny attending their lectures and just to see how they were treated by the public and how Lorraine Warren, treated everybody. And I remember Ed showed me some footage once that blew me away because right near Monroe is Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut, which is pretty well-known legend, the White Lady of Easton. When I moved to Newtown as a kid, it's one of those ghost stories you just hear because it's nearby, and you drive by it, especially if you're going to Dr. Mike's, this like killer ice cream place in downtown Monroe. You could drive by this cemetery, and I heard about the White Lady of Easton. And even though I never saw her, I would always be looking. And I remember Ed Lorraine Warren talking about how it should be seen in the cemetery, should be seen along the road alongside of it, how a pickup truck once hit her and it dented the fender, and he thought he killed someone, but there was no one there. And I was talking to Ed about it, and he said, let me show you some footage. And what Ed did was there's this little like pull-in section of the cemetery that's just off the road. You can park your car there. And you're technically on the outside of the cemetery, and that's an important part of the story because in pretty much most states, cemeteries close at sundown, and you're not allowed to be in them. It's against the law to be in a cemetery after dark. But Ed was parked in this turn-off spot where you could be still legally on the outside, but place a video camera and film inside. And he caught this footage, man, that just blew me away. And to this day, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. And assuming he didn't have Spielberg help him with this, I just don't know how to explain it. But this shape takes form among the headstones, and it kind of comes up from the ground, and it forms into this human-like shape. I mean, I would even go so far as to call it feminine, in that it looked like it had long hair, but no discernible features at all, just white, sheer, misty shape. And it starts moving deliberately around the headstones, coming toward the camera, and then this black stuff comes up from the ground and just pulls it back into the ground. The footage is maybe 5 or 6 seconds, but that's a long, long time. It's not like 1 second. I mean, it's like 5 seconds. And I remember going, man, Ed, I don't know what that is. And he showed me lots of other stuff, by the way, where I'm like, I don't know, dude. You just filmed right into the sunlight. Of course you're going to get wash out on the camera lens and stuff like that. And, plenty of things that I was just like, I don't know. But that one, I went, I really don't know. I couldn't explain it. And it's one of those things that stays with you, when you see something. Because, I want to figure it out. Whenever I see anything weird, I'm like, how can I figure this out? What's the possible explanation for it? And I get really excited when I can't come up with one.
So you pretty much have hung around some of the biggest names in the field growing up. You've written a ton of books. I'm assuming that's kind of like your journalism was kind of kicking in hyperdrive or whatever. How did you get involved with PBS, with your show there?
Well, with PBS, I was interviewed for. I've done a lot of interviews. What happens when you put yourself out there as someone that's into weird stuff is that when people are doing programs for various networks, they find you and then they want to interview you to get your perspective. One of those talking head interviews. So I did a lot of those, and this guy named Tony Dunn contacted me. He was working on a documentary called Things That Go Bump in the Night, Tales of Haunted New England. And it was about just ghostly legends from all over New England. He was putting it together for Halloween, and he interviewed me about some haunted places. And we just got to talking, and we realized We were born in the same hospital in the same small town in Massachusetts, like 10 months apart, and we just realized we really shared a brain when it comes to our perspective on this stuff. We kept in touch, and his project went nationwide. He did a great job on it, and we said, man, there should be a show just about New England stories, just these stories that come up all over. And so we kept talking and talking, and then we eventually did the first episode of New England Legends, and it was completely self-funded. He and I, we begged, borrowed, and stole everything we had. We called in favors from guys that could shoot cameras and do audio and compose music, everything. We just called in favors and got this done collectively on a shoestring budget, and PBS played it, and we got nominated for an Emmy, which was amazing because it's literally like it's just to have a project like that. I wish people could have seen how we made it because it was bubblegum and duct tape and, just like holding together with a wing and a prayer. And so we kept doing them. And then eventually I realized, like, there's just so many stories. And so then I started doing a weekly podcast with these stories, and it's just grown into something pretty awesome. And now it's also available on Amazon Prime. If you're a Prime member, you can watch it for free. All of our episodes, there's 6 of them now for New England Legends.
I've seen it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks for watching, Lauren. That's no, it's appreciated. And so it's cool because when you do stuff for traditional television, it was played on PBS. They play it every October. But if you're not home Thursday night at 7 and you miss it, well, that was that. PBS didn't have on demand, so we were psyched to be able to get on Amazon Prime and be able to have people watch it whenever they want and watch it beyond New England, watch it beyond just the New England stations. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it's still self-funded. It's still, our executive producer is my Visa card and Tony's MasterCard, but we do it because we just love these stories, and some of them they just demand that you see them. That some of them are just they're visual. You have to go there and see it, and so if you can't go yourself, we're going to have to bring cameras.
Well, I just love too. We've gone to a few of your lectures, and you always do your Q&A afterwards, and people ask about their local legends. Like, it doesn't matter if they're out by Boston, out this way. And you seem to know a little bit about everything when it comes to this type of stuff, which is really impressive. So,
well, I've been doing it a long time. And one of the things that happens is that I've always, there's an expression, all politics is local. You know that old expression?
Yeah.
I would say all legends is local. There's a Phantom Hitchhiker all over the place. That narrative comes up again and again. There's Gravity Hills that come up again and again. The haunted building is in, I don't know, I'm sure there's a town out there somewhere that doesn't have a building with a haunted reputation in it, but I haven't found it. Every town has got their little stories. And it's one of the things that make our communities unique, and people that are into this stuff just find it. And to me, that's really some of the most compelling evidence for the existence of this stuff is that the folklorist in me, the legend hunter and the journalist asks, why doesn't a story go away? Why does it hang around? And it hangs around for some reason that's beyond our control. It's a collective decision. And to me, that's really interesting. Why? Why is it this 200-year-old building in town has got a haunted reputation, and the 250-year-old building right next to it does not? So it's not just being old. That's not enough. Something has to happen. There's some catalyst. And we still talk about it. And I think, man, to me, that's haunted, hands down. That's what haunted means. It's a reputation. What's causing that reputation? What's going on in there? That requires further investigation. But a building is indisputably haunted once it gains that reputation. And that's not something you can argue with. You can say there's no such thing as ghosts, but that doesn't mean a place isn't haunted. And that's something that I think people struggle with, especially some of our skeptic friends who I think, sometimes their heads and even their hearts are in the right place. But I think trying to define the world the way you see it isn't totally fair.
Do you think that actually happens as much anymore? Like things become haunted, or is it just like an old world type thing?
No, I promise you they become haunted. It happens all the time. And not only that, there's a phenomena that takes place when the 9/11 site in New York City. Someday someone's going to call that haunted. I mean, it's haunted now. It's haunting. This horrible thing happened. there, and lots of people died, and that will bother us for as long as we remember it. And so I think one of the things that happens is when there's new tragedies like that, when there's horrible things that take place, atrocities that leave a stain on a building or on a community, that will literally haunt you. Now, that being said, it's a little bit crass to go pulling out your EMF meter right after a mass shooting or an airplane crash or a terrorist attack. That's seen as crass. But after enough time passes, it's seen as, well, of course it's haunted. This makes sense. What are we tuning into? We're tuning into this tragedy that took place. And that begs a big question, too. I mean, sure, if we go to Gettysburg today, that's fine because it was 1863. And enough time's passed, and no one is alive anymore that even had a relative there. Well, I mean, unless you're talking like 2-3 generations removed.
Yeah.
So to me, new haunts are being created daily. It's just, it may not be totally okay to talk about them just yet. And by haunts, I'm talking about like the big tragic ones that we think about, the ones that make it into books today. There's individual haunts that are popping up daily, where someone's home is haunted by a loved one who passed on and is visiting or whatever, maybe still lingering for some reason. Those kind of stories get written every single day. But the big ones, they're still being written. It's just not enough time has passed quite yet that we can talk about it.
Now, talking about like with your shows and stuff and the local legends, you do a lot of stuff based on things in New England, like both your podcast, your PBS show, done a lot of books on New England haunts. You've also traveled the world, but you go around the country quite a bit. Do you feel that New England is more haunted than anywhere else, or is it kind of like an even spread?
Yeah, so I one of the things, so last week I was in like 9 different states in 8 days, and that was in 3 time zones, and I was scouting for Ghost Adventures. I was on a trip. I went to New Orleans, and I went out to Oregon, and I was in the Midwest, and looking for haunts for the show. We had specific places we had in mind. And what's interesting to me, especially on a trip that quick, where you're talking to people about the same subject in radically different areas of the country, the way they talk about it is interesting. So in New England, I feel like we're just very matter-of-fact about our ghosts. It doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to offend your religion or not offend your religion. It's just, yep, that building is 200 years old. Yes, it's haunted. Whatever. The Starbucks down the street is open till 10. It's just facts. In the South, when we were down at New Orleans is a little bit different because that's quite a city, but you step outside a little bit and people start saying, we don't really like to talk about that because we don't know where it's from. We don't know what this stuff is. Not that they disbelieve in it. That's not the case at all. In fact, quite the opposite. They're afraid of it. And so these haints, these southern spirits or whatever, you start to get your religious involvement. Well, maybe it was sent by the devil, and so in that case, I don't want to talk about it. And then out in the Pacific Northwest, they were a little more New England. I think having tougher winters and stuff gives you a different sensibility about the world. They were a little more on the matter-of-fact side, and in the Midwest, it was somewhere in between. So I think it's really interesting, not to say there's more ghosts here, but we preserve our history more than other parts of the country. When buildings get old, we fix them up and take care of them, whereas in, say, Texas, if a building is 40, 50 years old, they tear it down and put up something new. It's just a different cultural perspective on the way we preserve our past. And I think when you walk down some of the streets, some of the small towns in New England, you could be on a main street in some small town, and that's what it looked like 200 years ago. I mean, yeah, I know now there's traffic lights and cars and stuff, but the same buildings, probably even the same color in some cases, where we're right there. And I think that kind of helps us tune in to our past.
So, you just said that you were scouting for the next season of Ghost Adventures. When that happens, do they call you up with a list of places, or do they say, hey, Jeff, you're kind of the man with this stuff, find us stuff?
Well, no, so, I mean, I've been working for Ghost Adventures since the first episode on the Travel Channel, and the way it works is, first of all, we're always looking for the next location, and that's always a priority. And sometimes there's certain areas that come up a lot and just require a little more digging. You just have to get on the ground sometimes. There's famous places like the Queen Mary where you really don't have to scout it. You know what it is. Plus, I've been there like 6 times now. Like this old ship, and so some of these places we just know about. Others require you to kind of get under the hood and take a look around. And so sometimes I'll pitch a place. Sometimes they'll tell me we want to find something here in New Orleans. We want to find something here in this particular Midwestern city. And so we go, and we make some phone calls ahead of time. We find out what's on the radar. But what happens that's pretty amazing, and it's a magical kind of thing when you experience it, you start talking to someone, and you say, hey, I'm here looking for ghosts and haunted places. This is what I'm into. And when they see you're sincere about it, that's when people start talking, and it's really cool. They're like, you need to talk to Joe down the street. He works down the street. He's working right now. You go in there and you tell him I sent you. He's working at the bar. You ask him about haunted places, and he'll tell you. And you go see Joe, and sure enough, he starts talking, and then he says, now you got to go up there to the coffee shop and talk to my friend Larry. And next thing you know, you're networking around town. You're getting below the surface. You're meeting locals who are sharing something that's profound and profoundly theirs. And man, it instantly makes you not a cheesy tourist. It's a really cool way to see the world and get into a community really quickly, as opposed to just trying to visit a place and say, well, who's going to let me in on something local here? And so that's been a really cool part of it. And then some of those people end up on the show. When I meet someone that's got a compelling story at a haunt, those are often the people that you see sharing their stories when we interview them on Ghost Adventures.
So it's kind of like sounds like a paranormal national treasure situation, and you're like Nicolas Cage, but you're looking for that ghost, following.
Yeah, I wish it was that exciting. It's just like, eating at McDonald's again? Oh God, staying at this hotel. So no, but that really is how it works. And I can't even tell you, I've been doing that for years, and it's so cool when you go to visit a community, because you're just an outsider. And pick a town. Just go to some town that you don't know anyone, and see how fast you can get into the local culture when you just start asking about ghosts and haunted places. Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is who I work for. This is what I'm interested in. I came because I heard on Google about this haunted place, but I really want to know from locals. And they'll say, I can't tell you how many times that's happened, where they go, that story about that place, yeah, I heard it too, but what's really crazy is this other building that no one knows about. And that's when I get excited, because that's what we all want, right? We want that thing that people don't know about, that they haven't heard about again and again, because especially when the investigator part of you takes over, there's some contamination. When a place is that famous, then all the stories are well known. All the stories get told on the internet and on TV shows and podcasts and so on. And you go there, and you, even if you don't mean to be, even if you're trying to be objective, you're sort of tainted by, what you've heard. You can't unhear it. You can't unknow something. And so that's something else that we always have to be aware of. I feel like I'm always trying to serve multiple masters. I'm trying to serve a television show, and I'm trying to serve the paranormal community, and I'm trying to serve a great story. And often I can make those masters get along, but sometimes they don't quite, and that's always a challenge with what I do.
Well, that's why we were so excited to get you on here finally. You watch those shows, you see the investigators, and everyone's always about, these guys are awesome, but they don't realize all the work that guys like you put into it. Like, you kind of do all the hard work. Like, anyone that's ever investigated and tried to research anything, like, it can take forever sometimes to find even one clue.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, but that's the thing about research, right? So research does take forever. You will never, ever know everything about a place. It's impossible. Can't be done. And name your place. Go ahead. The White House, which is, and okay, let's take the White House for a second. The White House is probably as you could come the closest to knowing everything about the White House, because everything has been so meticulously documented from the very beginning. But you will never know every minute that took place in that building. You'll never know the thoughts and actions of every single person, every single day, every single minute. And yet we can know so much about, you can get visitor logs, and you can know who built it, and architects and all this other stuff, but you'll never know everything. And so when you accept that, that's like a horrifyingly daunting fact for researchers, but also one that I would hope you could take some comfort in that, like, yes, you can spend forever, the rest of your life, just researching a single building. But what's exciting about that is that if you dig deep enough, you do start to find nuggets. And there's so many resources now, especially, man, these resources weren't around 10, 15 years ago. Newspaper archives are online. Ancestry archives are online. So many things that used to require weeks of travel between municipal buildings and local libraries and stuff like that, you can now do in your jammies while sipping a beer.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what the process for you is now, because I know back in the day.
Well, I just gave it away, didn't I?
That's it, huh? Just some internet and some libraries.
No, but the thing is, but that's a great starting point. But at the same time, you got to make phone calls. You've got to get local, because the people that can fill in the gaps are, like local librarians are an amazing resource. They know everybody. That's their job. You need, if you're looking up a building in a local town, call their library and say, I'm trying to research the history of this building. I know the town hall has these records, and I know the ownership, and I know the title search, and I know this and that. But what else is there? And they know, they're like, well, the historical society in town has got this room full of records of journals from that family. And no one would know that except someone in the town. And then that's your next step, is making an appointment and reading through some of those journals. So it's an endless process, but it's also a really cool one when you find something that all of a sudden gives you some clarity on the story.
It's almost like going to Old Sturbridge Village. You feel like you step back in time doing some of this stuff,
Yeah, no, and that's a great place, Old Sturbridge Village. I was born in the next town over, and so I've known that place pretty much my whole life. And some of those buildings have a haunted reputation, which is really, really cool because those buildings weren't there. They were moved there. They weren't built there. And so that begs some questions too, right? Well, what are the rules to all this stuff, this haunting stuff? Why is it this building has a haunted reputation, and it wasn't here 100 years ago? It was brought here. I don't know. If I ever figure all the rules out, I'll be happy to tell you. I haven't yet.
Well, we should have Lauren ask her favorite question then.
Go, Lauren.
Oh, hold on. Oh, shoot. You just bring it up. Sorry, I had to
Lauren,
walk
you've
away
asked
from my
him this at a
laptop for
lecture
second.
before. Come on.
Oh, God, I don't know. Hold on one second. Now I'm nervous and I'm going to screw it up. Sorry.
The answer is no, I can't give you Zach's phone number.
Okay. I am actually not a Ghost Adventures fan. I have to be completely honest.
That's fine. That's okay. I still get my checks either way.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I agree. My question to you is, when you do your research for the books and stuff, and this is kind of a question for myself as well, I mean, is there a research process? I mean, do you start with certain steps, or you kind of just play it by ear?
Yeah, so I like my computer, and so I open up a document and I'll put the building, right? And that's it. It's just the building, the address, anything I can think of starts to go in there. The obvious stuff goes at the top, the name, the address, phone numbers if relevant, websites if relevant, year built, by who, architect, stuff like that. But then when I start digging into the nitty-gritty, I'll do a newspaper search, and I'm a subscriber to Newspaper Archive, which is a great resource, but not complete. But then you start searching on, that takes a while, because I'll search on the name of the building, I'll search on the address of the building, and I have to search on individual owners. So sometimes you have to do a title search and learn who lived there and all that other stuff. So you start doing that kind of stuff, and then you start looking for birth records, death records, and so on. And then, like I said, local libraries, always a great resource. They might lead you to a historical society, town hall records. Insurance records tell you quite a bit, too, because now there's money involved. So who paid for insurance on these buildings, tax records, and census records, which are all available online, too, will tell you who lived there, and you start to pick apart some of the stories. So what happens is, understanding how legends work, sometimes you'll hear a story that they'll be like, oh yeah, so-and-so used to live there, and they committed murders, and then they go back to this house and they would hide all the evidence. And then you learn through picking apart, you're like, oh, so-and-so didn't actually live there. They lived somewhere else, but their brother lived there. And so, so that's how folklore works, is that there's always a nugget of truth in the folklore, but then you have to discern it. And you can make a choice. You can repeat the same stuff that gets repeated on the internet over and over, or he can verify it, and find out, okay, no, that is right, or maybe it's not right. And we just did a story recently, Ocean-Born Mary in New Hampshire, and the house that they call Ocean-Born Mary's house she never lived there, not according to the census records. It was her son's house, one of her sons, and I'm sure she visited that house. I have no doubt, because we know she lived about a mile away with her other son. But what happened was, in the early 1900s, someone buys this house, hears the story of Ocean-Born Mary, knows that the original owner had the same last name as Mary, and makes the assumption that she lived there, and then he starts selling tickets, starts giving tours, and so on. If you say something long enough over the decades, eventually it's just going to be accepted as fact, and people aren't going to check you on it. And so it's one of those things where you're like, oh, wow, like it may very well be haunted. I'm sure Ocean-Born Mary was in that house multiple times. She lived a mile away. Her son lived there. Why wouldn't she visit family? Of course. But she didn't live there. That was not where she called home. And so it's one of those things that you start to pick apart once you just get a little deeper than the surface. And you find sometimes even newspaper accounts will be repeating the same stories and legends over and over. And one newspaper quotes another newspaper who quoted a folklore version. And sometimes it's right, but sometimes it's not. And that's kind of our job, is to pick through that stuff.
Okay.
Cool.
My other question is I know you've done quite a few documentaries and books and whatnot, but what's your favorite documentary that you've done?
Oh, God. Well, I really enjoy working on New England legends, because what happens is, because I work in different mediums, I work in television, and I work in podcasts, and I work in books and articles and blogs and so on. One of the things I've learned over the years, and I've given workshops to writers, to people that want to be writers, and one of the things I've always said is that you have to serve just one master, and that master is the story. And the story will dictate how it should be told if you learn how to listen to it. So there are some stories that just aren't a book, they're an article. There are other stories that just beg to be documentaries because they're so visual, and there's so much rich visual stuff that it really should be televised on screen in some way. And some things should just be like a little 2-minute YouTube clip. And all of those things are valid, by the way. Like, it's easy to poo-poo any one of them and be like, really? A Periscope live on on Twitter, that's enough. And sometimes, yeah, it is enough. Other stories just grab you, and you realize that their roots run really deep. And so I feel like if you listen to the story, you will learn how to tell it. And Ben, I know you've been to multiple lectures. One of my favorite things too is to tell people stories in front of a live audience, because when you write books, you don't get to sit in people's laps while they read them. And if you're watching New England Legends, I don't get to join you in your living room while you're watching and go, is this part good? Is that okay?
If you really want to, you can.
I can, okay. I don't know. What's in the fridge? That could be bought. But but when you tell stories in front of a live audience, you get to see their reaction. You get to see if they lean forward and go, "Oh my God, really? That's the ooey gooey part," and that's really satisfying for me, because sometimes I get into stories that I'm like, oh my God, I care about this one so much, and I want to tell others, and I've told it in front of live audiences, and it's just they're checking their watch, they're looking at their phones, and I went, oh man, I thought this was so good. And so you drop it. You just got to let it go and realize I might care about it, but either I didn't tell it well enough, or the general public doesn't care about it enough for me to really invest in it. So it's a funny dynamic when you work in this stuff, when you find a case, a haunting, a legend, or whatever that just demands your attention. And that's and I guess part of that just comes with experience. You guys know you're investigating. Well, I know not Lauren, but like Ben, you're an investigator. Someone calls you on the phone, finds your website or whatever, and says, "Yeah, so my house is haunted," and you go, "Okay, I'm listening. Tell me about it." And then they just start something. Sometimes their word choice or whatever lets you know that they're full of it. You're like, you suddenly realize not only do you not want to go to their home, you don't even want to be on the phone anymore, right? I mean, that's happened to you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then other times people say just the right words, and your experience tells you like, whoa, this is something really interesting going on there, and I would very much like to go check it out. because there's some sort of credibility that comes through their phone call, their word choice, the way their tone of their voice, everything. And that's just experience where you go, oh man, I want to see that for myself. I want to help you try to figure that out. And I think that's, it's no different for me when I'm checking out stories and looking for haunts and so on.
We were talking about you do all this research. You kind of do like the legwork for the investigators, kind of get the legends rolling and stuff. Do you ever actually investigate any, or is it just...
Yeah, I do. And by the way, I feel like, and Lauren, you said you're not an investigator. I say you are.
Well, I am technically done.
Yeah.
I do a lot of research as well.
No, but I mean, like,
hiatus.
It's just a different way to do it, So
yeah.
One of the things I discovered years ago is when I first got into this, I would tag along with different paranormal groups, and man, all the drama and infighting and all this crazy stuff that was going on was pretty frustrating for me. And please, nobody take offense by this, but sitting for like 5 hours in front of a K2 meter in the dark in someone's attic just isn't my idea of a good time. It just isn't. Like I'm bored with it, and not only that, I understand how many things can set off a K2 meter that are not ghosts, and so I started saying, like, this equipment is interesting, and I get it, right? If an apparition floats through the room, man, oh man, do I want a camera running? Of course I do. I want to capture something, but at the same time, for me, the investigation, the stuff that I think is most compelling is finding the history and then talking to the people that have had firsthand accounts inside the location. That, to me, is the best evidence that I can capture. And not only that, because I've interviewed so many people, like thousands over the years, I get a sense for when someone's lying to me or when someone is really moved by something they went through. And one of the things I've learned, for example, in my interviewing, and this is going back to journalism, is when you're interviewing someone about an experience, I'm going to ask you the same question at least 3 times. Because the first time I ask you the question, like, okay, you're a ghost witness, Ben, and I'm going to say, so tell me, Ben, you came home from work, and what happened? I walked into the kitchen, oh my God, there's a little girl's ghost right there, and then poof, she's gone. And I went, okay. Like, that's because you're embarrassed. It sounds silly to you. I'm a stranger, and you're trying to get all this out and as quickly as you can. And so I'm not going to push it, but we'll talk about a couple of things, and then I'll ask again. I'll be like, okay, Ben, let's slow this down now. What time did you come home from work? And take me through it step by step. Did you unlock the door? Was it already unlocked? Did you smell anything? Did you hear anything? Did you see anything? When I get you to recall your senses, you are now going to slow the time down, and you're going to tell me that story again, and you're going to tell me details you very much neglected the first time around because you were rushing through it. And you're going to say, I dropped my keys, and I didn't think much of it, but it was just enough that I had to bend over and pick them up, and then I opened the door, and I thought I heard like a staticky sound now that you mention it, and as I'm walking in, I didn't smell anything weird, but something was different about the room. Something was different about the resonance of it, and I walked, and something caught my attention, and I realized it was a flash of red, and so you get all these details. And then the third time, I just call it cleanup, just to make sure you didn't miss anything the first 2 times. And then I'm going to get the most complete story that I possibly can. And I try to stay objective. I don't try to, one of the things that happens when someone's telling a story is that it's natural. They embellish. You don't mean to. You're not a dishonest person, but people will naturally do it. If you're telling me a story about going fishing or whatever, and I start leaning forward and going, really? Then what happened? You're naturally going to slow your story down. You might embellish a little bit because you have me captivated. And so being a good interviewer, part of that is just having a poker face, asking questions, listening, and asking follow-ups without showing too much interest, because then you don't want them to embellish the story. Not intentionally anyway. So those are the challenges that comes from it. And so when I get that story, I feel like that's some of the best evidence that I can capture is an account, because over time that person may be subject to ridicule. And, oh, you didn't really see a ghost, you jerk, you're lying, Ben, you were drunk, whatever, and so you might stop telling it over time, or you might convince yourself you didn't see it because you've just been ridiculed so many times for telling it. Those things happen. And so if we can get to them early, right after the experience happened, and we can document it well and objectively, I think we've got something that can stand up better than like a hit on a K2 meter. So for me, that's the investigating, and that's the stuff that I still do all the time. But sadly, I'm a little bit ruined because one of the things that happens, and this still happens for me, is that I'll get a phone call from someone who says, my house is haunted. And then they're like, so they start talking, and I'm listening, and they go, so do you think Ghost Adventures would come here? And that's when I'm like, and we're done. Like, yes. You might have the most haunted, you might have a place that makes Amityville look like Disneyland, and I'm not interested anymore because I just think you want to get on TV. And so I just have tuned out, and I'm shut down. There's no hope after that. So I'm a little bit ruined that way, but that being said, no, I still love to get out to haunted places.
So what do you think is the most haunted place you've seen or been to?
Oh, God, that's hard. I mean, there's so many for so many different reasons. I like places that history really left a mark, big ones. There's a place called Mansfield Reformatory in Ohio, where just this giant old prison. We filmed there a couple times, and I've been out there for events and stuff, and it's only a couple times have I walked into a building and went, oh my God, this place is haunted, or I just felt it. I felt it in my bones because I'm not psychic. I'm not even close. And that and Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, where you just kind of, I call it empathy. You tune into the people who were there, the humans who left a mark and who lived there and died there, and you imagine what their emotions must have been like. And big old buildings like that, for me, can be almost overwhelming, but to the point of just going, man, something profound happened here. This was a place with a lot of souls, and those are my favorite. I just keep coming back to them again and again. But that being said, I think every ghost exists for a reason, and that reason is we need them for some purpose that we may not fully understand, but they serve some purpose. They all do, every one of them. Whether it's the Lizzie Borden ghosts who serve the purpose of reminding us that no one was ever punished for a double murder, or Gettysburg, which should be haunted forever and ever to remind us what happens when a nation goes to war with itself, and all of these even the White Lady of Easton, seeing her along the road, a reminder: travel is dangerous. Be careful. Slow down. Use your high beams and stuff like that. They all exist for a reason.
Talking about, you have your books and stuff coming out. Sounds like you know your stuff, so you could probably write 1,000,001 books and still need more paper. Is there anything new in the works?
Yeah, well, so the podcast has been really fun for me. The New England Legends podcast. It's we've been doing it every single week. I've challenged myself back over the summer to do a story a week, and it's a story like a segment we would do on the TV show. Every single week, and I've been doing it with my friend Ray Ogier, he's a morning show guy in a radio station nearby. So we do it in a real radio studio and stuff like that, and that's been super fun. They're short; they're like 10 minutes. We call them micro podcasts, and it's just telling a story and how the legend came to be, and that's been really cool. I'm working on an audio book about the White House, my children's book, Who's Haunting the White House. I'm turning that into an audio book. And I'm writing a couple other books right now. I'm still working on a memoir of my trip to Mount Kilimanjaro last March, actually. So I've written a memoir about that experience because it was really profound for me, but also really spiritual to climb that mountain. And it was so that's something that's a little bit different for me, but not really that one. Not really that different if you think about it. So
yeah, well, you talk about that at your lectures, and swear to God, every time you tell that story, there's not a dry eye in the house. It's a very story.
Thanks. Yeah, and it meant a lot to me. It's one of those things that really it changed me for sure, and changed me in a good way.
So you're a pretty active hiker. I see you post a lot of pictures. You and Dustin have gone hiking before. You kind of go everywhere around here. What would you say the best spot up in New England is for hiking?
I love Mount Washington in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. It's the tallest peak we have east of the Mississippi River, and it's a real challenging hike. But it's also there's an element of danger there. Dustin Perry from Ghost Hunters, who you mentioned before. his first like real hike, I'm like, let's go do Mount Washington. And the poor dude had an injured hip and was just struggling. And we were really slow coming down, and it was getting dark, like dark, not just dusk. And we just made it to the parking lot as the sun was completely vanishing. And it made me realize, boy, getting stuck out here all night with Dustin. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was going to kill him and eat him if I got hungry. Like, he was weak. I mean, he was injured. I was going to just be like, sorry, man, I'm hungry, and you're going, and I'm going to wear your skin as a coat. So I think maybe that helped him get down the mountain too. The whole thought of me cannibalizing him or something. But no, I love that mountain. The views are incredible, and you just see the kind of majesty of the earth from a different perspective. You drive through strip malls and small towns, and I think it's easy to forget that this planet's pretty beautiful. You just have to see it from the right angle.
It's very common, kind of like clears your head doing the hikes too. We try to do them every Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing, and you got to move, you got to exercise, you got to get outdoors. It's so important, and I think that it gives you perspective, and it makes you better at all the other stuff that you do. That's one of the things I found. I mean, hiking's not for everyone, and that's okay, but I found that it gives me clarity and allows me to focus on my work with a lot more vigor than if I'm just working all the time, because that'll burn you out.
So we have the podcast is every week, you said?
Yeah, every Thursday at noon.
You have ghostvillage.com.
Still going. And still Ghost Adventures. My gosh, that's like my other day job. It's
Yeah.
We'd even ask, how did you get involved with them? Like
So it was 2008, and I got a phone call from Zach Bagans, who was actually referred to me by my friend Dave Schrader, who does the Beyond the Darkness podcast and radio show, and he said, hey, I need a guy that knows haunted places everywhere. And Dave's like, oh, well, Jeff's written The World's Most Haunted Places and these other haunted books. And Zach called and said, hey, we're working on this show for Travel Channel. It's just going to be 8 episodes, and we want some help with locations and the history and finding the people that have experiences. And I went, oh, well, that's cool. That's different than other stuff I've worked on. And so sure, let's do it. And then it was just supposed to be 8 episodes. That's all it was ever going to be. And then once it started to air, it was a hit. It was a big ratings hit for them. So we started season 2 and then 3. And honestly, that's been going since 2008. We do like 2 episodes a month. We film 2 episodes a month. And that's a constant thing. Like that machine is always rolling. So even though there may not be new episodes on, we're still filming and producing new episodes. And even when new episodes are showing, we're still filming and producing new episodes until we build up a backlog of 13, and that becomes a season. So it's always going. And but what's good is that we, after 200 plus episodes, we know what we're doing now, and it allows me to it allows me to work on my other projects when I'm not working on their stuff, and still travel and do everything else. So it's really been great. It's been a great opportunity for me, and totally okay if it's not your show. I get it, Lauren. It's fine, but no harm, no foul. There's lots of other stuff.
No, it must be amazing doing the research and stuff.
It's the same.
I think that would be the best part.
Yeah, it's flexing the same muscles as I do for my books or for anything else. And
yeah.
And I give them credit too. I give Zach a lot of credit, because there's been stuff where he's like, "Man, I heard like a whole school bus full of nuns was murdered in this building," and then I'll look it up and I'll say like, "Oh, that didn't happen, Zach," and he'll be like, "Okay, then we scrap it." So when I find something historically doesn't hold up, he understands and he goes with that, and that's I respect him for it. That we want to stay. We want to stay true to the history and things like that. I mean, whatever happens during the investigation, that's all on them. I have nothing to do with it. But but the setup part, that I do.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to ask you the one question we ask everyone. And all
right.
I know you've answered this for us at lectures before, but for the listeners at home, do you think that we will ever be able to prove that spirits actually exist?
I think it's proven every single day to millions of people. But will we prove it collectively? No, I don't think so. And the reason is because it takes an element of faith and belief. And if you look at the religions of the world, there's no religion that has yet to get 100% market share. and think of the resources they have. Like the Catholic Church, you know how many billions of dollars they have, right? And they can't get everybody on the same page. What chance do we have? A bunch of like people in black T-shirts running around with EMF meters. So, no, I don't think so. But that's okay. And I think one of the most important things you can do as an investigator is to take that completely off the table as far as trying to prove it to anyone else other than yourself, because it doesn't matter. You know, I've told people ghosts are indisputably real. The point can't be argued by any skeptic, any scientist, ever, anywhere. It's impossible. The fact that there is a word for it means that it is a thing. What they are, well, that we can argue, right? That's the thing we can argue till we die and then find out, you know. But the fact that there is a word for it in pretty much every language and an understanding of it in history books and in religious texts and so on means that it is real. If I say ghost, you know what I'm talking about. Like that we have an understanding between us if I just use that word. And so that fact has been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's just what they are that we're never going to agree on, I don't think. And I think the best you can do is to not try to convince anybody other than yourself, and just do what you do and put it out there for people to consume. You know, when you write a song, when you create a piece of art, you know, like think of a painting you've ever seen in any museum. The artist doesn't stand next to it and try to interpret it for you, right? It's just, this is what it is. You take it as you will. And so if we collect evidence on our investigations, just put it out there and say, this is what it is. This is how I was collecting it. You take this for however you want to interpret it. And some people are going to go, holy cow, that's an EVP, that's a voice from beyond the grave. And someone else will say, it's just a coincidence. It's just some muffled sound. And that's okay. That's all right. That's the world we live in.
Speaking of the church, would you say they are less involved now compared to what they used to be?
Less involved?
With like paranormal happenings and hauntings. Like they used to like do a lot of exorcisms and everything, and it kind of seems like very like few and far between now.
Well, so I think they keep it quiet. They don't want to sensationalize this stuff. I've got a friend that works for the Archdiocese of Pittsburgh, and he told me that this stuff's really on the rise. And which sort of makes sense to me because the popularity of the subject is just so huge between television and internet and everything else. So people are having issues, and then what happens when you experience something really strange that doesn't compute to you, that doesn't make any sense, like a ghost sighting or something maybe darker, that you feel that this is not a ghost, this is something that might actually be here to hurt me and was never human. You are going to go to the primal parts of your wiring in order to interpret it. So if you were raised in a religion, that's a place you will go. Everybody does it. There's no escape. If you were raised Jewish, you will go to your Judaism. If you were raised Hindu, you go to your Hinduism. You will go to those primal parts to say, this doesn't make sense. How do I interpret it? What do I do? And so when you get to your religious place, then what you do is you go to your clergy, and your clergy will then do an investigation and then determine if they feel that there should be more intervention by the actual religious institution and so on. And so, so on the one hand, the popularity of the subject has probably kept the clergy a little busier than they used to be. I would imagine. It's just they don't talk about it.
We kind of have a hard time actually trying to get them involved.
Yeah, a lot of time they almost take it as a joke.
Well, yeah, so that's a funny thing to me, because I'm like, oh, really? Like, there's no such thing as ghosts? And I mean, which clergy are you talking about? Are you talking Catholic? Are you talking Protestant?
We tried to get Catholics involved with one case we've had. And
we were successful. It just took multiple churches to go through.
About 4 months. We had to go through the Worcester Diocese at the end. And
yeah, so every diocese is supposed to have an official investigator when it comes to, like, a potential exorcism. And that investigator is kept secret. So it's not like, oh, it's Father Smith in the Worcester Diocese. Like, so, and the diocese knows who it is, and the person knows who it is. But the average priest, if you knock on the door, unless it's him, won't know who that person is. And so how it's supposed to work, if you're Catholic, is that you know, I have a problem, I go to my priest and I say, look, something's wrong with my house, or something's wrong with my family, these things are happening. And the priest might come and say a blessing and do just a very, very preliminary, like, look-see. And if the priest suspects anything, the priest is supposed to report it to the diocese. The diocese then says, you know what, this might be worth an investigation. Then that investigator is activated. Please go meet with this family. The investigator then is going to put you through all kinds of stuff. Like, they're supposed to put you through medical checks with medical doctors and psychological checkups with psychologists and so on. And they put you through all that. And that's how it's supposed to work. And if that clears, nope, they're fine, psychologically, they're fine medically, then it gets escalated from the diocese to Rome. And then Rome is the one that would assign a potential exorcist. And those people are kept sequestered. It's not just, any average priest that does it. These are specially, trained people. And so that's how it's all supposed to work. That being said, I feel like a lot of these priests don't want to deal with it, which is crazy. I'm like, isn't this the business you're in? Right?
So it's not like what you see in the movies, once again, with the whole thing.
No, it's not. But at the same time, I'm like, if someone comes to you for spiritual help, that is your job, right? It's not like I went to Dunkin' Donuts and said, give me a large regular and an exorcism. And they're like, that's not my expertise. I can get you a bagel. No, that is their job. Their job is to lead their flock. So one of the things I think is so important, if you're dealing with like a family case, you need to ask, what's your belief system? Do you have, are you involved in a religious institution? And if so, that's the place where you should start. If they're Jewish, you deal with rabbis. If they're, Muslim, you deal with imams and so on. And so you start there and you say, someone in your flock needs some help. They need a blessing. They need something. Can you please get involved? And if they don't, I'm like, you need to find a new religion, or at least a new church or mosque or synagogue or whatever. Because this is why they exist. This is their job. So yeah, it's always confusing to me when those people try to shirk responsibility. That being said, I understand if they may not want to talk to like a local paranormal person, but they should talk to their local, their local congregation and so on.
Yeah. That's why we weren't like quite sure on what was actually happening, because either no one would get back to us or they would take it like we were kind of joking. And we actually had to go through a family member of mine who's a priest, and he actually explained the whole thing to us. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that explains that.
It's complicated. Yeah. And by the way, rightfully so. You can say like, oh, geez, what the heck? But at the same time, you don't want just any priest being like, okay, I'm going to perform an exorcism. When you start dealing with that stuff, now you're talking about really tweaking with people's wiring. It's so dangerous to come into a home. It's one thing to say, I think there's a ghost here. I think there's a ghost of someone who lived here long ago, and they just don't know they're dead, and they're just still going through the motions. And that's something that a family can kind of wrap their head around and go, all right, well, that's not wonderfully convenient. It scares the kids at night sometimes, but I at least get where it's coming from. But when you say, like, no, there's something inhuman here, it's a demon, it's here to hurt you, well, what do you do about that? So I have to live here and you're going to go back to your home or whatever? And that's really something frightening. So that's that's one of the things, like, I get that the clergy should be careful.
Yeah. You got anything coming up, Jeff? Any events, things coming out?
Well, yeah, there's always stuff going on. My website, which is jeffbelanger.com or ghostvillage.com, has all my appearances and events that I'm doing everywhere, and I'm always adding to it. There's always lectures going on and so on. So I'm always happy to meet people there, and it's really cool to like, that's where I met you guys, and it's so there's those kind of things going on. And I have a newsletter every month. If anyone wants to subscribe, it's free. Just put in your email address, and I'll be happy to send you a note once a month. You could be a close personal friend of Jeff.
Yep. Then the podcast we talked about is every Thursday.
Yeah, and you can get that on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We put it everywhere.
And you just scouted out the next season of Ghost Adventures, so plenty more of those coming.
Can I take a break yet, or no?
No.
Take a break?
You take a break when you're a ghost, Jeff.
All right, fair enough.
All right, well, Jeff, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I know it was hard to find some time for you, but
thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate the lectures and all the guidance you kind of give everyone, so it's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and wishing you the guys the best as well, and keep it up. I think the most important thing is that we just keep asking questions. You know, we may not find the answers, but the questions are worth asking.
Thank you, everyone at home, for listening to another episode of the People vs. Paranormal podcast. As always, I'm Ben.
I'm Anthony.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Jeff Belanger. Rest in peace.